This is the Eyemoo.
This is the first time for me seeing a reflective LCD screen. Thanks very much to Eyemoo for sending this out to have a little look at and give you my thoughts on it.
First thing I can say is you certainly shouldn't use it on dark mode. But who should use this rather than Eink? Well, it is quicker, it is more responsive, so if you want something which is reflective and doesn't give you such eye strain and you need to use video, then this is for you. Or if you do a lot of typing and if you are worried and you do get eye strain on a traditional LCD or LED screen, if you pop it on a little stand like this and leave it connected to the keyboard, I think this works really well. This is probably the setup that you want to use this on. This is an RLCD screen, and you might have heard about these. There's been a little bit of hype over this as a new screen type, but it's an interesting one because it's really an adapted old screen type. It's something that's come on my radar because I discuss the use of Eink tablets, which people like because they don't give them such eye strain. So this is a type of screen which can actually give you less eye strain. These are my very first thoughts a few days ago when I opened this device up and gave it a first play around. So unlike an ordinary LCD, the light isn't coming up through the screen, the light is actually reflecting back from a panel behind the screen. It has a more deeply recessed screen than an ordinary LCD screen would be, because it actually has to have room for a glow light. So the light itself is actually a front light, which then reflects. You can in fact use this even in the dark. There's a light built into the front of the screen. Now right now we're in front of quite a light window, so there's lots of ambient light and it looks really quite good. In the dark though, I'll test it out later on. I also have an LCD light which you can probably see reflecting, although that might look bad to you on the camera. I don't personally see that reflecting into my eyes because of the angle of that light. I think this is based on the NXT paper device and Eyemoo just branded it, but I'm not entirely sure. Let's get some specs up. So this is called an Eyemoo S1, 8 core with an image processor as well. Android 12, 6 GB of RAM, 128 ROM, no extended storage, LCD screen, reflective LCD with front light, 10-point capacitive touchscreen, supports active pen, so I don't think this has a Wacom layer, which is a shame, but it might well work with, for instance, the active pens that I have. I think it's a capacitive active layer. It's very interesting. I mean, it does have a very noticeable color gradient, but I haven't actually got into it to access the different lights, the different actual settings that you can put it on, so I'm going to do that before I give you my opinion on that. So it looks like a standard Android tablet, as you would expect. I think that brightness level does the front light. So now there's very little light in the room. There does seem to be some light. It does have these brightness levels, so that is the front light, I guess, at full. And yeah, you can probably see that actually the front light, I think the LEDs must be at the bottom here. Yeah, at that angle you can see it's actually quite bright. But straight on, they're obviously set at the base of the device. I think that's right. Yeah, they're set at the base of the device. So the LED strip must be down here at the base of the device, and then it's actually reflecting off this layer down into the screen and back up towards me. Interesting. Now, whether that is going to be comfortable to read at night, I'm sure it would be, to be quite honest. Of course, I'm going to use dark theme.
Most YouTubers don't even know about this first.
Should definitely have a more rapid access to the. Ah, there it is. It's right there at the top the whole time. Good. Fascinating. So, what's my first impressions then? Well, I'll use it for a bit and I'll let you know. Might be difficult to use in really direct light because at a certain angle you just can't see it due to a reflection. I'll use it in a bunch of different lighting situations and I'll get back to you. And this is my thoughts after now a few days. This is probably the way that you should use it. A Bluetooth keyboard, just a little notebook. This is how they discuss it being used. A second or a third screen on your desk, just to be your extra place for your written notes,
just like I'm doing right now, whilst you're working on your other screens or other tasks on your desk. And I can tell you right now, with the natural light around me in this room, it actually looks pretty good. I've got it on sort of medium to low brightness settings, and yeah, it does look quite good. And I can feel, actually, as I'm typing on it, I can feel that this is doing better than staring at one of my normal LCD screens. Specifically about this device, it does say that it supports a capacitive pen, but I'm not sure which it's going to work with really, and I wouldn't hold my breath for that. There are some images of people using it with a pen. I don't think it's going to be as good as a Wacom layer. It's probably going to be a battery stylus or something like that, and they don't tend to be quite as good as Wacom technology. So my recommendation to Eyemoo is they actually really try and market this as closer to a paper screen, and they actually go with a Wacom layer, because we don't just like the screen technology about the Eink tablets, we also really like the way they work with the pens. Screen protector they put on this is an ordinary glossy screen protector, and I think they ought to go for a matte, very unreflective screen protector with a textured surface, and go for a pen as well, because people are looking for the next paper, not just a different type of LCD screen, and they really want to be able to use pens with them. I would also say that the depth of the screen, so the actual depth between the top surface and the actual pixels, is quite deep. It's far deeper than I'm used to, and I think they need to sort that out. So I did ask about that distance between the screen and the top surface, and they said that it's not possible to reduce that at present. Essentially, this is because of the way that light is shot over the screen horizontally and then needs to be reflected down into the screen and back up again. And to do that essentially vertically, it does need that small gap for those reflective technologies in those layers to actually work. Fingers crossed, with time that technology will actually get better and thinner. That is to accommodate this front light layer. Okay, so the actual light is in front of the screen, it's at the base here, and it's therefore having to go up. It's shining upwards and then reflecting down into the screen. So for instance, at that angle, it looks a lot brighter the way I'm looking at it now than it will to you. I'll maybe show it to you. And that is just, simply because of the way that technology works. Now, this is an interesting point, because LCD screens of maybe a decade and a half ago, they had the LEDs mounted around the edge. They were behind the screen, so they were reflecting, they were shining into the screen and then reflecting forwards and through the screen. And then we had LED screens, and LED screens has a LED behind each pixel, essentially a white LED behind each pixel. And then there is the LCD, the liquid crystal, which actually diffracts the light and filters therefore the different colors out. And so that allowed you to have darker areas and better contrast essentially. And now we have OLED screens, and these aren't OLEDs, but this phone is, for instance, and each actual pixel is a set of R, G and B glowing LEDs. And that means all of the other previous ones are about having light reflecting towards you, right, light shining directly at you. And that can cause eye strain, especially because to give it a natural color, we have lots and lots of blue light. We have really bright blue light. Most tablets that are talking about reducing eye strain are actually going ahead and just giving you a mode which is reducing the blue light to help preserve your eyes essentially. This is saying that no, it's better to have the light reflecting off and reflecting into your eyes, because that's a more natural look. This really makes very good use of ambient light. So in good lighting conditions like I've got in this room right now with a nice window open, I'll put on some extra lights for the video, and just generally before I turn those lights on, it was actually quite a comfortable way to look at this screen. That was not very much using this front light. But in conditions where it's actually very dark and you're running the front light to be able to see the screen, that's the real test of whether this is going to be a useful technology or not, in my opinion. They really do need to have a less reflective top layer, because actually if you take this out currently into very bright conditions, you do get that glare reflecting from any light source all around you, the sun or the very bright sky. That is limiting the usefulness of this screen. It's kind of a difficulty because there are some viewing angles that it looks great and others that it doesn't look great, and that is a challenge of this thing. Whereas, and I'll do a full comparison with Eink screens are actual pigment which is being brought close to the surface to make it look dark and further away from the surface to make it look white. They are very, very good in bright lighting conditions, and they tend to have a very matte screen, a matte top surface, which gives you that diffuse light. But in good diffuse lighting conditions, this does look good. The other thing is, because the lights are at this end, when you're using the lights, there is a bit of a gradient, and this side of the screen tends to look darker. And therefore, almost as you read across, your eyes are having to change the amount of light they're letting in. You can almost feel as you're reading each line that you're having to strain a little bit when you get across the far side of the screen, and that's not great, I think. They really
want to have a way of getting a more even top lighting across the screen, and that can be done because other front lit screens, for instance the Kindle Scribe and other front lit Eink tablets, have a very even lighting across the screen with a front light and with less of a gap between the top layer and the actual screen itself. The other difficulty with this one is the pricing, and the pricing of this is going to be $499, they think, when it comes out. We will see exactly what it is. There will be some early bird offers around, so look out for their Kickstarters. But when you consider what you can get in an iPad at the same price, that might make it a bit of a difficult sell. This is an interesting first foray into the world of reflected LCD, so watch this space.